So January 24, there was a viral video of a woman in Spa complaining that a man entered the women's section and exposed himself. And she was very angry because apparently there were children there. So when that happened, the employee of Spa asked her or said maybe she's a transgender woman. In that case, that's where she belongs, because here in California, transgender women are actually allowed to use, even though they still have the male body part, they are already allowed to use women's facilities like spa or public restrooms. So for those of you who don't know, if you ever have been in a authentic Korean spa, there are certain areas there, shared facilities, shared spaces where you actually go in naked in your birthday suit, like the jacuzzi where the incident apparently happened. That's just part of like Korean culture, basically. So you go in there and you're just you're naked, basically. So if you're not, they're gonna look at you crazy, like, why are you not naked? You're supposed to be naked here. That's part of their culture. So January 24, there was a viral video of a woman in Spa complaining that a man entered the women's section and exposed himself. And she was very angry because apparently there were children there. So when that happened, the employee of Spa asked her or said maybe she's a transgender woman. In that case, that's where she belongs, because here in California, transgender women are actually allowed to use, even though they still have the male body part, they are already allowed to use women's facilities like spa or public restrooms. So for those of you who don't know, if you ever have been in authentic Korean spa, there are certain areas there, shared facilities, shared spaces where you actually go in naked in your birthday suit, like the jacuzzi where the incident apparently happened. That's just part of like Korean culture, basically. So you go in there and you're just you're naked, basically. So if you're not, they're gonna look at you crazy, like, why are you not naked? You're supposed to be naked here. That's part of their culture. So and yes, I've been into one. So that's basically what happened. She was complaining that a man entered their side of the facility, and the employee asked maybe she's transgender. In that case, that's where she belongs. And then the woman apparently said some words that are not so nice. Basically, she was discriminating against transgender women and sort of implied that transgender women don't actually exist. So she was insisting that no, that guy was a man. And then she was questioning whether the facility is not concerned that there are children in there and stuff. And then the employee of Spa said that, well, if you have a problem with it, then maybe you shouldn't come to this facility. Go somewhere else. And so apparently, after, I think it was less than a week ago, the police actually made an arrest. They were able to arrest the guy who did it. And as far as my understanding goes, he's actually not transgender woman. He's just an exhibitionist. So now, but still, there are debates and questions that are being put forward because of that incident. One is that if he was actually if that person was a transgender woman, then it's true that that's where she belongs, because in California, transgender women have the right to use women's facilities, public facilities like spas and bathrooms. So basically, you can't discriminate. If they want to use it, then they can use it. Now, no requirement is actually, you don't have to present like an evidence that you're a transgender woman. You sort of just have to declare it. And so this is the same thing, the same issue that J.K. Rowling argued that actually caused her being canceled on Twitter. She, at that time when she was in the middle of all of these controversies and people were saying that she's discriminating against LGBTQ, what she was saying is that in Scotland, I think at that time, or England, maybe Scotland, there was a law that was going to be passed where they would allow transgender women to use women's facilities, and then there's no requirement like in California. You can just declare it like, I'm a transgender woman, and that gives you the right to use women's facilities. And she was saying, what if there are children in there? Then of course, it does not guarantee that if it's an all-female facilities that it's 100% safe, but having the opposite gender there actually makes things worse. And so you're putting additional risks. Basically, you're putting children into an even greater risk by allowing that. So she was arguing that, and people were saying that, well, transgender people have the legal right to use it, which is true now in California. So that was the point that she was making, and that is, this thing that happened is actually a fulfillment of that fear of her, that if it is true that there were children present in that spa that saw the male body part, that's actually what she was talking about. And in many Asian countries, you really don't want children to see the male body part live of an adult, unless it's in an educational situation like school in biology. So ideally the teacher would be explaining what that is and blah blah blah. But to see it in person of that of an adult, then that really could be traumatizing for a kid. And so that's a fulfillment of what J.K. Rowling was talking about. So what some people are saying is that that's where your prejudice is actually coming out, or your true emotions towards this entire thing is coming out. Because even if you're somebody who keeps on saying it's okay to, that we support LGBTQ rights, and then this thing happens and you're against it, but then because apparently a child is involved, then so you're not okay with it. That's what they're saying. So it means that you're not okay with it. And what other people who are supporting what that woman was saying and J.K. Rowling is saying is that it's not about that. It's not about it's not about discriminating transgender women or any LGBTQ basically, but it's about the body part. It's not about their gender, it's about the body part. You don't want children to see that. That's number one. And second is that you don't want them to be in that vicinity where it makes it they become more vulnerable. So those are the two arguments being presented. So I just it hasn't been, there were protests as a result of this incident. There were protests, there was an uproar on Twitter, but the important thing is that guy who did it has already been arrested. And so he took advantage of the law by doing that, by going in the women's section, and basically, all he needed to do was declare himself to be transgender, and that already gives him the right to use it. So he abused it. And so that's the two argument. So I don't know, what do you think?